Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to Introduction to CAD Solidworks in our weekly Zoom classroom meeting. Alrighty, so we've released Module 9. Module 9, we begin bottom-up assembly. And when we're working with bottom-up assembly, we're taking some of these parts that we have designed in previous chapters and we're putting them together and assembling them using what's called mates. And mates are like super glue where we can put things together and then we can make them like concentric to be able to line up and take away different degrees of freedom as we start to work with these. And so we have Lab 9A, Lab 9B, and then Lab 9C is this gate assembly. It's like for an automatic gate. This one's kind of challenging. If we take a look at the content area, 9A and 9B, we've got the parts already for because we have drawn those. And then 9C, you can download the parts from here within D2L. And so you can download this gate assembly as the zip files and then unzip them. And when you work with assembly drawings, you want to keep them all in the same folder because they're associated by where they're located to how the assembly drawing references them when you open the next drawing. So when we work with these assemblies, what we're going to do is we're going to save them with something called pack and go, and we're going to zip them. And so we can save those with pack and go. And when we save them, what I recommend students do, one of the options in here is to save them as a zip file. And so we'll save those as a zip file and then we'll submit those to the assignments folder. As we look at the assignments themselves from Chapter 10, we're working with this bottom-up assembly. And so as we work with Solidworks, and now we go to the next step. The first step was creating the part models. Second step is creating the assemblies. And in the assemblies, we put them together. And then the way the textbook is laid out, they go into drawing files, creating drawing files, which I think they should move up. But either way, as we go through and we start to assemble these different components, what we'll do is we'll take away these different degrees of freedom to be able to make them or get them to go together. And so as we look at this first drawing, what we'll do is we'll bring in this component right here, and that first component will be fixed. We'll start off with it as an assembly. We'll bring in the center ball. We'll show the origin, because when you bring in the first component, it is then fixed, or at least it's the main reference for the rest of the objects that we bring in. And then once we have that component in, what we'll do is we'll add other components like these ball joint arms, and then we'll use what's called mates to put them together. And so if we were to take a look at this drawing right here, right now it's mated and put together. If we were to start a new assembly drawing, we'd say new assembly and we'd say OK. And then when we insert these different components, what we would do is we'd browse out to where we have these components. And we'd start off with this center ball joint. Now the T-joint, I believe you have to download. I believe that's a component that I'll put in the main splash page. I'll double check to make sure it's in the module. But we bring in this main part, and I'm not sure why this isn't working. Let's try it one more time. Let's see if I can just open the part. I think that might be part of the problem, is that it might be already opened. There it is. Let's close that down and see if that's the problem. Shouldn't be, but you never know. So again, if I start a new assembly and then I browse out to introduce this first component, again, it should work. Finally, there we go. So my other drawings were open. And so when I bring in this component, I can just go ahead and place it. It will place it at the origin. Sometimes you'll have to go into the hide and show your origins, and you'll see that it's in the center of the component there. And then what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll start adding these other components. And this is what's really nice about SolidWorks, is that you can go through and simulate the motion for it, and so how things will fit together. And so we can go ahead and add these other components, and then we can take those components and we can use what they call mates. And so what mates are, like this paper clip, is that we can go and we can select this face here, and then we can select this face here, and then SolidWorks will offer us a solution. So it says, you know, you probably want concentric to that, and so we can green check mark that, and then we can move those components and they will stay within that mated configuration. And so as we start to work with these different objects, we can go through and then bring in these different components, add them to the assembly, and then add the T-joint, to be able to put that together like that. And so we can come over here and we can go back and green check mark this. We can come back to insert component, and you can hold control and you can drag off a copy of it. And so oftentimes we'll do that. I kind of like this. It's almost like virtual Lego. And then we can go through and mate these, green check mark it, they don't follow normal rules as far as being able to go through walls and things like that. And then we can go and add our other components. And again, we can hold control and drag off a copy of that. Not sure where it went. Let me try that again. There it goes. And then as we start to work with this, we can then again mate these other components. And usually I try to get them set, and if it doesn't mate correctly, like this one did not, we can go through and we can show our mates, and then to be able to remove them, let me just delete that. There we get the right mate this time with concentric. Orientate it. And then it does get kind of wonky as far as when you start to put them together, because there are so many degrees of freedom that we still need to remove some other ones. In other words, we want to hold it so that it will be able to work within the range of motion that we do have. But that's essentially what we're working on to get started. We're going to create these different assembly drawings, and then once you have them saved, you'll save the assembly. And so you can save the assembly. Going to upgrade mine to the latest version of it, and then you want to use the pack and go when you turn these in. And so I'm not sure why it glitched on me there, but pack and go will allow you to turn in the files as a zipped file. And so as we work on these different assemblies, we have the assembly 9A and then 9B is this part right here where we've got this chain that we put together with the different pins. And then as we go through, you can see these different mating links that we have set up. Here they are. And then as you hover over them, you'll see them on the screen. And they're pretty straightforward, you know, as we get started with it. And so we have this chain link mate, and then the last assignment is to work on this gate drawing. And this one, like I say, is a little bit tricky, but it's a good drawing. I'd kind of like to have one of these on my house, at least on my driveway, so I can automatically open the doors. But as we go through, we'll work with these different mate type drawings, and we'll work with those in bottom-up type assembly. When we go into the top-down type assembly, where we're actually kind of designing on the fly and putting things together, we'll be looking at the intermediate course, because I really like to just hammer on the basics as we start to work with the course and putting these different components together. The CSWA does have 2 assembly drawings on it, and so if you are thinking about taking that exam in May, we can get ourselves prepared for that. I believe it's the 20th or the 21st chapter within the textbook. And so here it goes through and walks through the mating of these different gate components. And then next week we'll look into advanced mates, things like gears, cams, rack and pinions. And so once you start getting into this component, this is where you're starting to get some really great simulation experience. You can model the parts, and then you can see if the parts work together in your assemblies, and that's a big help. Alrighty, so with that, I'm going to go back to the main splash page. All the information is located. I think this is a bonus exercise. This is like a there's a pulley assembly in here for these components that you can take a look at the exploded view, and if you'd like to do a bonus, you can do that. I'm going to go back to the main splash page, and we'll just continue working on our SolidWorks. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording, post it, and open things up for questions.